Okay, this is our last presentation and then we'll do our closing. And we're so glad to have Leah Voorhies join us. That's two people from the state office, technically. Yes. Woo. Thanks for coming. And those online, thanks for staying online. We've got a big number, but Leah, just so you're aware, we have Alpine sort of there. This is Jordan School District. We had Davis right here yesterday, but they all joined online today. And Nevo is back here in the corner, and then the rest are USDB and sprinkled. And we have
Granite.
Thank you. Granite is online. So we've got all of the outreach teachers, at least represented, all the areas represented. And this is our good friend and the deputy superintendent of the state, Leah Voorhies.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for the invitation to spend a Friday afternoon with you. Happy weekend eve. Woo! We're almost there, folks.
Yes, we are.
It's super fun to be with you, be in Springville. I actually get to be here next week too, interestingly enough. Yes, I'm coming down with the special education monitoring team next week, I think. Yeah, but welcome to the 2025-26 school year. I'm excited to spend some time with teachers, even though it's only a little while. I appreciate the opportunity to spend a little time with the people who do the really good and hard work. I write policy, I implement policy, I evaluate policy, I monitor policy. I work with words, you work with kids, and that's really important work, and I appreciate it, so thank you. But I started my career here. I'm a psychologist. I'm the only psychologist at the State Board of Education, over 300 employees. I'm the only one, kind of like Tigger. I'm the only one. And so I started as a school psychologist, did my internship just like Heather did. She did it with me. So I did my internship here at the Schools for the Deaf and the Blind, and then I worked as a psychologist here for several years. Went back to school to get a doctorate degree in psychology. Came back to USDB as a director, and then moved over to the State Board of Education to be a state special education administrator. Yeah, and then for the past decade, I've been a superintendent at the State Board. And so Darren, who you met yesterday, right? He was here yesterday. Okay, so he is one of the assistant superintendents in my under my supervision. Darren and I have worked together also for a decade, which has been wonderful because he is the best of the best when it comes to human beings. And he and I actually met in China. Yeah, both of us were doing some educational work in China and at the same time and met there. And then our paths crossed and now we're dearest of friends. And I'm really grateful that he was willing to accept the reassignment to come to USDB, because it's a big shift in roles and responsibilities for him, but he's super excited about it and was super excited to meet you all and just meet teachers all over the state. He's been on all the campuses this week already, and he's really excited. He keeps sending me like Google Docs of all these plans and questions that need to be answered. And so he's spent a lot of time in your behalf this week, and it's just going to continue. So you also know that State Superintendent Molly Hart is the interim superintendent of USDB. And so the three of us together in coordination with the state board we'll be working with the legislature to determine what the next steps are for governance for USDB. We actually met this morning with the USDB working group that the legislature had required as a part of at the end of the session, they required that a working group be put together. We went this morning. We will be presenting to the Public Education Appropriation Committee in a couple weeks with the recommendations of that working group. So there's a lot of work going on, and we recognize that for all of you, it may feel tentative, but for us at USBE, it is really important. Tentative is not what it is. It's very foundational and very important. And we've spent a lot of time and energy trying to think through how we can best support you as you are supporting your students. And for me, especially since I already know so many of you at USDB, it's personal. So I just want you all to know that it's personal, it's important. So when Adam asked me to come talk, he gave me some options. And I said, well, why don't we just do a Q&A? Why don't people just ask me questions that they've got? And I will try to respond to them. So thank you to those of you who thought in advance about some questions. So we'll start with those, and then any in between or at the end questions you might have, I'm happy to try to answer them. Those of you who know me know that I am very honest. Sometimes that comes across as a little assertive, but if you ask me and I have an answer, I tell the truth. And sometimes it's not pretty, and I do have a nickname at the State Board of Education as Bad Cop, because I tell the truth, and sometimes it's not truth people want to hear. And interestingly enough, that is actually why I moved from USDB to USBE. I was recruited because there were some compliance issues here at the time that I had worked on cleaning up. As a result, the State Board of Education actually asked me to come do compliance for the entire state. And that's what took me away from USDB, actually. So I kind of have a long history of being bad cop. Anyway, moral of the story, I tell the truth when I can. So
This is the very top of that. So if you want me to go up or down, that's like.
Yeah, let's start at the top. Okay, so I hope y'all can see, and that you can see, it looks like you can see online as well. So first question, how to input minutes for direct and consult students on the IEP, especially when districts just want to put as needed. Okay, first of all, consultation is not a service to a student. At the end. Consultation is a service to an adult about a student. So consultation is not specially designed instruction. Consultation is not a related service. It doesn't go in that section. It doesn't get counted towards the minutes that apply to a student services. Consultation is something that you provide to an adult who is working with the student. So it goes in the supplementary aids and supports section of the IEP. Consultation can be as needed. Consultation can also have a specific amount of time. But it doesn't, the time does not apply to a student services and supports. It is not a support to a student.
When you say supplements, do you mean the modification section of the IEP?
Well, I can't, so the section of everybody's IEPs are different, but it's supplementary aids and services is the category that's on the model form. So you'd have specially designed instruction and related services, and then some IEPs next have accommodations, and then supplementary aids, but most IEPs, the model IEP, has supplementary aids and services and then accommodations. Is that how yours works?
Ours is, I think, flipped. So
and the various districts, yours might be a little different too. But it is not specially designed instruction because the word instruction is not there. It's not a related service because it is not going to the child. It's going to an adult. Okay.
Sorry, I'm Sherry. I can't even look it up. Okay, I'll go to this computer and I will find out.
Super techie here.
Sorry, what is it?
It says program modifications or supports for school personnel and or supplementary.
Okay.
There you go.
And services.
And supplementary aids and
For
services.
half of students.
Yes, so it's about adults. It's not about kids. Okay, lots of adults need help. So it's not that it's not important. It's just not about the kid. So it doesn't go in the service section. Okay. Okay, how to determine beneficial services versus those that are legally required. Okay, FAPE in real life decision making. This is such a great question. Have you whoever asked this question or any of you, have you ever looked that up in LRP to see what case law says about that? Do you want to respond?
I've just done a lot of digging and I feel like it goes back to it depends. And
Yes, it does go back to independence, but the Supreme Court has actually spoken to that issue. Okay. So the Supreme Court has said more than once, actually, that the argument is retrospective, unfortunately, not prospective, which is why it is complicated. That's why it's difficult. Okay. So just saying right out up front, it is difficult. And how you determine if you have provided FAPE is actually after, not before. Okay, so beforehand, you do the best you can. Okay, beforehand, you look at the needs, you look at the goals, you hear the parent information, you hear the teacher information, and you look at the grade appropriate standards that are related to the age of the student and say, in order for this student to be able to meet the needs, to be able to meet the grade level standards and proficiently, how much service and supports does this student need? Right? You all do that. That's not new. That's nothing new. Well, then what the Supreme Court says is if and that doing all of that is what the Supreme Court calls meaningfully calculating FAPE. Okay, has the IEP been meaningfully calculated to provide a FAPE? Okay, that's direct language from the Supreme Court decision. Meaningfully calculated, and the answer is: did you have the discussion? Okay, that's answer number one. Did you look at all the data? Did you talk to all the people? Did you have a good college try discussion about what the student needs to receive a FAPE? Okay, that's the first part. And how would the Supreme Court know that? Your meeting notes. That is one of the reasons that meeting notes are so important. How would I know that you had a really good discussion, that you looked at all the needs, that you talked to all the people, if you don't have meeting notes? Okay, so that's one. That's the first part. Okay, the second part is then.
that happened. Oops.
In ours, we have to take.
Yeah, it's a requirement. And it says right in the special education rules, at any time, I have the right to ask for your notes. And because I have general supervision of the special education program in the state of Utah, at any time I can ask for IEP notes. Not that I want them, but if there was a question, then I would ask for them and do. We get 30 or 40 complaints a year that rise to the level of having to pull out IEPs and actually look at the notes. Okay, but I mean we have 700,000 plus students in the state, and 90,000 of them have disabilities, and we're looking at 40. So it's a pretty small sample size, but anyway. So that's the first part of what the Supreme Court says is how you determine. The second part is you start providing the services, you start monitoring progress. And if the student is not making progress, your IEP is not reasonably calculated. The end. Like that, the Supreme Court pretty much said that's a mic drop. If the student is not making progress, that IEP is not reasonably calculated. So that is that you have not gotten to the legally required. Okay, so first we're starting with the legally required. A student has to make progress. Now, the Supreme Court then says in the same sentence, in light of their circumstances, in light of the student's circumstances. So the Supreme Court doesn't define what progress looks like for all students. The Supreme Court says you as an IEP team have to go back to looking at the data, talking to all the people, having the conversation. Is the student making reasonable progress? And if you as an IEP team say no, your IEP is not reasonably calculated. If you as an IEP team say yes, and you keep going, and then the parent files a complaint, then we get to make that determination. Okay? So it's complicated because it's a retrospective. I mean, there's a piece that's prospective, but the real bulk is retrospective. It's start providing services, measure progress. If the student doesn't make progress, you didn't get there yet. Okay, then you need more, better, different. And if you come to special ed law conferences, you hear me say that all of the time. More, better, different. Right? Okay, now, question. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so then let's go back to beneficial. Okay, that's such a good question. IEP team also gets to have a conversation about what is required for FAPE. Okay, back to meaningfully calculated. All of us, every single one of us, there are all sorts of services and supports that we would benefit from, right? Think about your paycheck. Think about all the service and support you would benefit from if you had a bigger paycheck, right? Or if you had more time. Heather and I were just talking about the fact that she has to be mom after 4 o'clock. She can't be school psychologist after 4 o'clock anymore. No, right? So all of us would benefit from more. Sometimes all of us would benefit from better. Sometimes all of us would benefit from different, right? But IEP teams have been tasked with the responsibility to determine what is required for FAPE. And LEAs, the LEA representative on the team, has been tasked with making the final determination about what is required for FAPE if an IEP team cannot come to consensus. The job of the IEP team is to figure it out. If they can't, because parents want more than the rest of the team thinks is needed, which they should. They're the parents. They should want the world. They should want it all. Or if you as teachers think, you know what, I don't think this is enough, or I don't think this is the right service, different, right? Or I think the person who is providing the service is not quite getting there, better service, okay? You may think that in order for the student to really gain the skills they need to do such and such, they need more, better, different. And that may be absolutely true, but that's not the requirement. The requirement is access to progress in the grade appropriate general education curriculum. And that's it. If we had all the money in the world, if we had all the humans in the world, we would do way more than that. We would do 180 minutes. We would do more than 6.5 hours a day. We have access and progress in the grade appropriate general education standards. That's what we have. And because this question was asked, I'm going to be very honest. and tell you something that maybe you don't want to hear, or maybe you do want to hear. But in the USDB working group that has been meeting, several times, questions have come up about all the services and supports that USDB provides for students who are deaf, students who are blind, and students who are deafblind. And the fact that these 3 disability categories of 13 that exist in the state, your students are getting more service than students in other disability categories. Students with autism do not get the intensity of services that students who are blind, students who are deafblind, and students who are deaf are getting from USDB. They don't get to participate in all the activities that students who are deaf and deafblind participate in. That has been a real discussion. That has been a concern that has come to us from parents, that has come to us from special education directors across the state. Now, on the one hand, students who are deaf, students who are blind, students who are deafblind need a lot of support to be able to access and make progress in the general education curriculum. So what you are providing may be fake. It may not be enough, right? But at the same time, if the student had autism or if the student had a traumatic brain injury, if we compared their IEP to one of your IEPs, just statistically, there's more going on your IEPs. Just a piece of information for you. Okay, so answer the question. So how to determine beneficial versus legally required? What is legally required? 2 words.
Access, progress.
Progress. How do you figure it out? You have the discussion with all the people and all the data. And then what do you do?
Implement.
And you take notes, yes. And then you implement. Then you implement.
Progress.
And then you go back and miss the mark. So interestingly, I don't know if it has come to you yet, but USD is going to be participating in our pilot to learn to do educational benefit reviews.
Yes.
Is everyone?
Of course I was asked.
Okay, Heather, thank you.
So I will be there at that training.
Yes.
In all my spare time, I don't have.
So many special ed state special ed directors across the state, some LEA special ed directors across the nation, or I mean not the state, the nation, and some technical assistance providers have gotten together and done some really deep work into answering this question and trying to do some both mathematical but also anecdotal answer to this question, and developed a process called an educational benefit review. And we are teaching people all across the state to do this. I just spent 2 days in Denver teaching 9 other state special education directors how Utah does it and how they might want to incorporate it into their system. Educational benefit reviews help teams look at not just whether or not the student is making progress, but the next step, which is what is the rate of progress? Because if you think about it, okay, in order for a student to really benefit from special education, they need to make more than 1 year's growth in 1 year's time, because general ed is making 1 year's growth in 1 year's time, right? That's how the standards are set up. And you write IEPs for a year in the hopes that you're going to provide supplemental instruction that's going to get the student that's closer to where the general ed peers are, right? You're trying to close the gap. Okay. Well, how do you know? Okay. This is a process. Yes. So you look at all the data, right? But one of the things that we have been working on for several years that we will be introducing you to is this idea of taking last year's IEP and this year's IEP, 2 years ago IEP, however many you've got, And mathematically and anecdotally, looking at progress over time and look at the student's rate of progress. Because if you know the rate, then you can determine if the median growth of a student in the state of Utah is in 1 year is 1, like 1 grade, right? So 1.0, 1 grade in 1 year. Okay, 1 grade standard in 1 year. Students with disabilities need to be moving more than 1.0 if they're going to catch up. How many of you have a way to say that your student is moving more than 1.0? Woo, Steve, I want to talk to you.
My kid who's in SPED, I mean, I'm tracking her, of course,
Yeah.
to make sure.
Well, we have designed a way that will help support you to be able to make that determination. It's called an educational benefit review, and we're starting to implement it across the state.
Is there something with that analysis though that's looking at cognitive abilities? Because like, I guess if they're working at a 3-year-old level and they're 7, and if they've made more than a year progress, you count that? Do you know what I'm saying?
Can everybody online hear, or do I need to repeat questions? Okay, so the question is, does it take into account cognitive ability? So it's mathematical and anecdotal, because that's a super important question. Thank you. Because it is looking at individual students, their individual needs, their individual data, because as the Supreme Court has told us, it's progress in light of their circumstances, right? So the goal is more than 1 year's growth in 1 year's time for the average, right? I said median, for the median student. Some students with disabilities may make more than that. Some of them may not. But here's the really cool thing. Okay, so in your example, 3-year-old or 7-year-old who's working on the level of a 3-year-old. Okay, that's what their data says. Functionally, they're working at the level of a 3-year-old. If I analyze 4 years of IEPs, okay, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and between age 3 and age 4, the student's rate of progress was like, let's say 0.2, because the student is making 20% of a year's growth in 1 year. Okay, what we would expect of a student. That student is making 20%. Okay, and then from age 4 to age 5, you're able to determine that the student is making more like 0.25. That student is accessing and making progress, and you have data to prove it. And now your goal is, let's see if we can't get that student to 0.3, right? You may not be able to get 1.5 or 1.7 or 2, right? But if you can speed up the rate of progress, and you can look back at previous IEPs and go, this is what we did that appears to have made the difference. We got to do more of that, or we have to do that better. Or you look back and you go, this is just, we're not increasing the rate of growth here. We're not even looking at growth here. Then you need to do something different. Yes. Got it.
Can I go back to your comment earlier about the deaf, hard of hearing, blind, deafblind populations?
Sorry, I didn't want to move out of the camera, and then it just occurred to me, I'm like, I bet the camera can't find me. Sorry.
Those 3 populations of students have more services, did you say, than, does that take into account that a large portion of those populations have multiple disabilities?
Okay, important question.
But they also have autism, they also have intellectual disability, they also have.
The increase in Deaf Plus.
Yeah, so the question is, in saying that students who are deaf, hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired, and deaf-blind, they have more services and definitely more expensive services than students in 10 of the other disability categories. Does it take into account the students who have multiple disabilities? who are being served with the primary classification of deaf, blind, or deaf-blind, because that's the one that has the most educational impact, right? And that would be very difficult to to pull out, but it has come up. Like even this morning, in the conversation this morning, the question of whether or not students who have multiple disabilities, even if the sensory loss is really the educationally impacting disability, if USDB really should be the main service provider. It came up this morning. So
Say that one more time. Sorry. Can you say what we just said one more time? If, like, are you saying, is USDB the better place for Deaf Plus students?
yes,
Okay. Sorry.
yeah, no, yeah.
I just want to make sure I.
So restate what you said.
So the question came up this morning. Okay. Is USDB the best place or the best service provider? Because it's not all about placement. Sometimes it's just like you're all outreach teachers, right? So it's about service provision as opposed to placement. Okay. Is USDB the best provider, or in this particular question this morning was about placement, but for students whose sensory impairment, it has been determined their classification, or even if multiple disabilities is their classification, the reason USDB is spending so much time and energy and support is because the sensory impairment appears to be the place at which there is the most, where intervention leads to the most educational impact, if USDB is the best service provider.
Or what if it's not the sensory impairment that is most significantly impacting, but USDB is still the primary service provider?
Which
That question wasn't brought up. That is a question that we have.
Sure. Yeah, and I had it 16 years ago when I was here. Yeah, sure. It's a very relevant question. But policymakers are, I mean, you asked, is that coming up? Yes. Policymakers are looking at that question.
Is it because like there is a specific school for the deaf and blind and there isn't for those other specific?
Well, there actually are.
We do for autism.
But we have specific schools for students with autism.
And then
We have specific schools for students with intellectual disabilities as well.
And then is it because of the amount of staff sometimes that is assigned to a student, like an interpreter or intervener?
Yeah, so it's partly about the cost, because, and the cost is high because of the number of staff, right? It's not that, oh, there are too many people helping. It's that when lots of people are helping, that's very expensive.
In addition to, say, like a hat system,
That's a hearing.
a microphone.
Oh.
Assistive technology.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Assistive
but part of that, so yes, I mean, that's important to the conversation, but it goes back to IEP teams make decisions, right? Policymakers do get to make decisions about who is going to provide the service. They don't really get to make decisions about what service gets provided, because that's the IEP team, right? But it is interesting when you look at now 2 audits, okay? The internal audit just audited USDB. The Office of the Legislative Auditor General is putting out an audit of USDB. Students with sensory loss are receiving more and more expensive services.
Well,
So,
we provide the service and we don't provide the service based on the expense.
no, we don't provide the service based on the expense. No, we don't. We provide service based on the IEP, but policymakers are looking at, is this the most effective and efficient way to do it? It's not even about the most expensive, to be super honest. Policymakers care deeply. I mean, they are struggling with these conversations way more, honestly, than I thought they would. Because they really care deeply. To work in education in Utah, you got to care deeply. Like, what's the return on investment?
I just went back to
Health
that
issues.
question originally.
Issues.
Mental health issues. Yeah.
I just went back to that question I asked you because in a district, I would say easily 80% of the students we serve have way more disabilities than deaf.
So she just said she asked that question because in a district, easily 80% of the students that you serve have other disabilities. Yeah, so looking at the research, and someone may have looked more recently than I have, but I did look several years ago for it wasn't, it was basically an audit, but anyway, 40% of students who are deaf plus. Yeah, that was the most recent, but it has been several years. 40% is a big number.
That includes the school for the deaf, right? And in a district,
But I'm talking about nationwide.
still, in a district, most mainstream deaf students don't have SPED services. They have 504s. They have SPED services as a deaf person in an extreme environment because they have multiple disabilities most of the time.
Okay, so the comment was students who are in regular classes receiving services because they're deaf generally have 504s as opposed to an IEP. And when they have an IEP, then it's because they also have other needs, which may be true. I don't actually know. I wish I could definitively say that was true, but I don't know because we don't get data about 504 plans.
I don't understand why they went on an IEP when we check their classification. There's not, like, here's the check mark, we're classifying them deaf and hard of hearing, but we're gonna gray out these other boxes because they have these too. They have autism, they have, you know what I mean? Like, so
the question is why, once you've determined primary classification, are the other boxes checked out? Okay, that's actually a policy decision. So that actually happened. Some states do allow secondary classifications, but in Utah, many, many, many years ago, okay, the state decided that we would only determine primary classification, and that primary classification was a ticket to Disneyland. That once you get in the park, you get anything you need for FAPE. You just have to be determined eligible to walk in the door, and then you get anything you need. And
Regardless of whether it's on the.
Yep.
I'm just saying, I think that skews your other data.
So that could skew our data. I can't tell you because I don't have other data.
I don't know that it really would, because there are kids with autism that don't have an IEP that are on a 504 plan. There are kids with lots of disabilities that are not on IEPs that have 504 plans.
Right, we have no idea.
Hard hearing kids that don't have IEPs that are on 504 plans, they're getting very minimal services, mostly just accommodations in class. And so it's not, so I think with the data that you're looking at is probably really true because you're looking specifically just at the kids with IEPs.
Yeah, so the comment was it may not skew the data because we also don't have data on 504s of students who have autism or students who have OHI or students. Yes, we don't. You're absolutely right. We don't have that data. Kathy?
Recently, I was told we do the medical history on kids with multiple disabilities. And I was recently told that on those disabilities, they are now checking everything they have, not just multiple disabilities.
Yeah, so Kathy's comment was recently for students who have multiple disabilities, she's noticing that they're checking everything that the student has and not just the classification, which there's no prohibition against that. There's just no way to tell me that. You can do whatever you want on your form, but I only accept, like the system, right? Only accepts data about primary classification. So but that was a policy decision, but like so many years ago.
USDB is having more and more 504 kids too. We used to have only IEPs, but now we have a lot of.
Yeah. So USDB also has 504s.
I just had someone text me that's on there, and they asked if there's kids with intellectual disabilities that have no auditory access. So if they're deaf, we have a student like this in our district as well that has no they won't keep their CIs on, or the parents chose not to do a CI, but they are intellectually disabled, they have the cognitive scores they need to be diagnosed with special school. Is USDB going to open a class for kids like that?
So the question is USDB going to open a class for students who meet the criteria for an intellectual disability, but don't have access to auditory information? Is that the question? I have no idea. Yeah.
So right now, the way I don't want to say deal with it, but the way we manage that is they end up having to have a one-on-one.
Yeah. So she says the way that's currently managed is with a one-on-one. I'm just gonna guess from the conversations this summer, the answer is no. But I don't know. The working group could make a recommendation and the legislature could do, or the board could do something completely different. But from the conversations, I would guess the answer was no. Those are great questions. Okay, let's move to next one.
Leah Voorhies, what we.
Could she create an official cheat sheet?
Can I create an official cheat sheet that we can show districts how the state wants to see USDB services documented on IEPs? Oh, that's interesting. I can think about that.
Just us good road. I like that. Good road.
I know. Whoever this is, I like you too. I like your thinking. I like you all. But I like this thinking.
Yes.
Okay, what's the next one?
Okay.
Eligibility determination. Schools have different views on classification. Yeah, teams have different views. Teams within schools have different views, right? Some say that students must have an intellectual disability to be classified as multiple. Is this the case? No. Okay, the answer is no. However, when you look at the rule outs for multiple disabilities, it's actually pretty difficult to determine that a student has multiple disabilities without an intellectual disability. It is possible. It isn't super likely, to be honest. It just isn't super likely. It is possible, and you can do it. I mean, if you go down the eligibility criteria, but that two things would be making such a huge impact that you couldn't provide educational services for one or the other. Intellectual disability becomes quite prevalent.
Shouldn't ask this. Adam, tell me to be quiet if I
Be
should.
quiet, Heather.
Okay.
No, go ahead, please. I don't let me stop.
So when students come to USDB and say, I get a student from Alpine that's been.
You're welcome.
Found eligible under speech or language impairment.
Okay.
They come to USDB, we're told that we have to hold a new eligibility, that they have to have deaf and hard of hearing, or hard of hearing.
Yeah.
In order to be served at USDB. We then hold a new eligibility under the category of multiple disabilities with both of those things listed, if that indeed seems to be the case.
Huh.
Why?
Yeah.
I can tell you why we do speech.
I'm glad you asked that.
Because
No,
why do you do
I
speech?
will tell you
That's a
right now,
big-
that's, I've received students who speech and language is
I
their
argue
issue.
this.
It is not hearing loss. I have.
So I was
many
just gonna say, the
students-
level of hearing loss is typically not so great, and they
Oh,
haven't
so
been
many
without
times it
sound,
says
which is why it's
Alpine-
labeled a speech and language impairment before it leaves our district.
Okay, so the question is, students come to USDB. First of all, I have lots of questions about students coming to USDB
I'm sorry.
before the eligibility has been determined
No,
to
they
be.
haven't.
No, they had no
So,
eligibility.
so Alpine holds
Okay.
it, we determine speech. and language
Alpine
impairment.
determines speech language
The parents
impairment.
choose USDB
How?
Why is that?
Thank you.
because
to.
the state,
trouble.
the state situation is that USDB is supposed to be invited to all of our eligibility meetings because they have a hearing loss.
And the parents then have an
And so the parents then
opportunity
get to
just-
choose if they want to take our service or if they want.
So
to
don't
choose
blame
USDB
Alpine.
services. And so once they choose USDB, because it's. Then
Can
they,
we hop in for a minute though? This is Hillary Moody. I'm one of the directors that I attend some of these. I have to, the parents don't necessarily, they're not the ones that just choose. It's an IEP team decision, but it's an option on the plate, if that makes sense.
we say what we have to offer, and if it's an appropriate fit for USDB, they say what they have to offer. If it's a Deaf Plus student USDB will typically say Alpine has special ed services that are more appropriately fit for your child. Our school fits this way. This is kind of the student that fits in our school. And so then they're not really offering that option, if that makes sense. Sorry, I'm trying to be
We may
clear.
have,
Yeah, open a can of worms.
opened a bigger can of worms.
That's okay. I mean, the only way it gets figured out is if it gets
But the question
discussed.
is, why is the determination of eligibility change? Like, why when they're at USDB?
Why do they have to
Does it have to
change
be
the
hearing
eligibility?
impairment?
And the reason is because USDB is not supposed to serve kids who are not deaf and hard of hearing, blind and visually impaired and deafblind,
So they
or
they
in
have a hearing
preschool.
impairment, because they have hearing loss, but they're aided and they have good access, which is why they're,
So
That's why they're
their
speech and
deafness
language.
is not impairing their education, it's something else.
it's not the primary.
And it.
So deafness is not the primary. These students come from the district having a hearing impairment, but it's not their primary disability. Speech language impairment is their primary disability, but parents see that USDB is an option and they jump. Yeah, that's problematic.
Not following that part, but then when they come to us, we then need to hold a new eligibility, but what I'm hearing you say is multiple disabilities is.
That's not the direction I would go, but I think I want to spend some time actually looking at this a little deeper. Okay.
You're well, sorry if I didn't explain that.
No. And I want you to be able to get your question answered. That's a very valid question. And obviously,
In the last 10 years, that there were times we didn't invite USDB to the meeting because we would look at the level of loss and we were like, we're taking care of this.
yeah,
And then we get told, no, if they have any kind of loss, you better reach out.
you better invite us.
Single
Okay.
site,
And
one
then
frequency.
parents,
Yeah.
they're like, look at this
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yep. Hello. I just said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have proven my point. Thank you. But yeah, no, this is a really good question. So let me, whoever asked that question, let me hold off and spend some time with Adam probably. And
You were the best.
That wasn't
This
Heather.
is happening at
It wasn't
EDS.
Heather. It wasn't Heather.
I'm clarifying
Wasn't me.
my application.
yes, Heather's asking for clarification. Yes.
In-
I'll just tell you, I'll tell you straight up, I love these kind of questions.
But this
It's like intellectually stimulating.
This leads to a similar line of thinking. So as to what we've talked about, like eligibility and so on. So there are occasionally unicorn students, I will just call them,
Yes.
who do not have any kind of hearing loss.
Okay, there are occasionally students who don't have any kind of hearing loss.
And the deaf and hard of hearing teacher of the deaf, becomes not maybe their file holder, but their predominant service provider.
The teacher of the deaf becomes the predominant service provider.
They may be nonverbal because they're autistic,
Okay.
but
Autism or Down syndrome, those are the.
yes.
And
right?
they may have autism or Down syndrome or, yeah, some other
That
disability.
is something, then, like when it was talking about legal obligation,
Uh-huh.
eligibility, is it appropriate for the DHH teacher to be the main service provider?
That is an LEA decision. So the
Okay,
question is, is it appropriate for the, oh, sorry, keep moving. There's the camera. Sorry, friends.
But I think this is a big thing. It's like, where do they fit?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. Okay, so and the answer is two-part. Okay, quick, simple answer. LEAs get to choose who does what. Teams determine the what. LEAs determine the who. Parents don't get to choose their providers.
I gotta run and get Alex right
LEAs choose their providers.
now.
Hold on, somebody's on. Let me mute everybody.
Rebecca's on.
All right, let's see.
Because the parents choose to use sign language. And because signing is easier than speaking, so a lot of kids with Down syndrome will.
Yeah, for students that have cognitive disabilities, signing
So it's
might
been
be
sold as their
easier.
First language. as signing instead of using an augmentative device.
Instead of a communication
They
tool.
stick with
Yeah,
signing.
yeah, sure.
And we've even had people reference that signing is an AAC. Here, you might wanna
Which is
look
then
at
where it comes to, we're giving a person to the student instead of like an AAC.
And instead of a device. Yeah, instead of a tool. Okay, so back to the LEAs choose the who. Okay, now, so that's the quick, short answer. Okay, the longer answer is back to, okay, progress in the general ed curriculum, access to progress in the general ed curriculum, right? So if in your case, which I think may be relevant in the reason that you're asking the question, okay? If the LEA assigns a person who maybe has a license, okay, but doesn't have the knowledge, skill, and experience to provide the required, as determined by the IEP team, specially designed instruction on the IEP, it's the LEA who gets sued. And the LEA has to take on that responsibility. Okay, LEAs choose the who, and if they choose the wrong who because they are stingy, because they don't understand and don't have the expertise, because they hate someone else, that would never happen. Because they feel like they don't have the cash to get another provider, which you can't tell the parent that, right? This conversation can't be about money. LEAs have to solve these problems. Okay, then it's the LEA. When a complaint comes in or a due process hearing request comes in, it's the LEA who has to defend that decision. But they can make that decision because the LEA determines the who. Now, you as experts hopefully are involved in the conversation, but I've been you. I know that you're not always involved in the conversation. I know that when I read files. I know that when I read every single complaint that comes into the state personally, and I read every single decision that goes out of the state personally. And I'm one of the only state directors in the nation that does that. And partly because we have so few, I actually can. New York had 1,100 last year. We had 40. Okay, so I can read 40. That's 3 a month. Right? Well, it's 6 a month because you have to read the complaint, then the decision. But I read every single one. So I know where the pain points are in this state. I recognize that as a pain point. You accurately identified one, but LEAs make the decision and then LEAs are on the hook. And they are on the hook because in all those complaints where there were findings of noncompliance, they had to provide compensatory education, which is expensive and time consuming and super obnoxious. But that's what's good for kids. So that's what we should be doing. Okay. All right. Next.
This one I know.
Me? You get to do the.
I think it's this one here.
I know we've been given guidance on how to write teacher to deaf services on district IEPs. Several districts are using programs that now allow for customization. Yeah, that's a problem. For example, sometimes hearing services may be the best fit from the drop-down menu, but doesn't clearly describe the role. Additionally, our services. Okay, so this is the valid problem.
So they're using a system that has a canned answer.
Canned answer versus, so what do?
Put it in the notes?
Notes. You put it in the notes. Yep, you put it in the notes. That's actually really simple. Yep, you put it in the notes.
More into this MD classification stuff, let me know as the school side.
If what was the beginning of the question? If what?
When you look more into.
Oh, when I look more into the multiple disabilities.
Classifications and placement stuff, let me know.
I will call you. We'll have lunch.
Okay.
Lunch over IEPs.
Yes.
Okay. Specifically, we've been told that we need to meet all IEP minutes each month, including those in which we have holidays, breaks, or when the school hasn't started yet. Is there a statement could be made? No, there is not.
Okay, we just had this discussion earlier today and we said Leah was going to talk. We said that Leah was going to talk about this. And then we decided to close the door like it was the the dirty closet that you're hiding all your monsters and the guests are coming. So if you want to open that door, we would love to hear you.
Okay, short, simple answer, no.
What was the question?
The one we.
The one earlier today.
How is there a statement that can be made on the IEP that will cover such situations? Short, simple answer, no, there is not. If you write services on the IEP that are monthly, or that are weekly, or that are daily, or whatever you do, okay? And then you fail to provide those services because maybe you were at UCAS last week and UCAS was closed for the rest of the week because of the assassination. Okay, because UCAS is on the campus of Utah Valley University. That special education teacher did not get to provide services last week. So if she has students on her caseload that had weekly services, she did not provide those services. Okay, let's go back to what the Supreme Court said about FAPE. Reasonably calculated to provide a FAPE. That is the law of the land. Reasonably. If you cannot provide services because there's a holiday or because there's an assassination, and I'm not being flippant, right? If you cannot provide services because your school burns down, or Millard County School District, I actually got a complaint today because their high school is not finished. It was supposed to be finished, and then they were gonna start school a week late, and then they were gonna start school 2 weeks late.
They're still out of school?
They're not in school.
Oh, my word.
They're thinking not till November.
Yeah.
Why aren't they online then?
They are,
Oh,
yes, they're online. Yeah. But still, okay, stuff happens, okay? Your teachers. And yes, my nickname is Bad Cop, but I'm not the police. I'm your biggest cheerleader, okay? You provide the service in the very best way possible that you can. You document when you cannot. Okay? And then if a complaint comes in, if a due process hearing request comes in, hearing officers and complaint investigators, of which I am one, will use the Supreme Court standard of reasonable. Okay, now let's say that in the Millard County School District situation, okay, Millard High School, they haven't been in school for a month. Okay, there have been online services, but there are concerns from parents that they actually aren't getting the services that they need. Okay, reasonable concern, right? Got a complaint today. Okay, so if and when I go investigate, okay, and there are notes that say, we tried this and we did this and we did this. I'm like, yep, reasonable, bye-bye. Or I read the complaint and I'm like, oh, why didn't you try this? Why didn't you try this? Why didn't you try this? This is not reasonable. What am I going to do? What is the consequence? Compensatory education. Provide the services. Right? The compensatory education, the consequence is not that you lose your license. The consequence is not that you lose your job. The consequence is not that I come down and berate you. The consequence is I say, hey, maybe you don't understand this requirement. Let's get together for an hour and talk about the requirement. And student missed 17 hours services in the next 8 months. You need to provide 17 extra hours of service along with the service that you're already providing. You need to provide 17 hours of extra service. Okay. And yeah, it's hard, but it's not the end of the world, and you're not going to lose your job, and you're not going to lose your license. And I'm not going to say, well, you're the worst teacher on the planet, and put your name on a billboard, because you're not. Because you're really good teachers and you're trying to do the best you can, and you have way too many kids on your caseload, and we do not pay you enough. And it's not we, because I don't get paid enough either. Hello. But we have more kids than we have adults. But the thing that we have in this state is adults who show up for kids.
Can I ask a follow-up for that? So say the reason you didn't meet their service minutes this month is because you were out sick for 2 weeks.
You're out sick for 2 weeks.
The district doesn't provide a sub. For
The district is on the hook for that.
But if you had emergency sub plans that say their study skills teacher provided for them, does that count as?
Oh, that's a really good question. Thank you. Okay, so the question is, the district doesn't have a sub for you, which I totally get. Yeah, there are not subs for you. I get it. Okay, so you have sub plans. You're out for a couple weeks. Could the study skills teacher provide the services? Okay, the answer is yes, if.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's a big if. Okay, and the if is you have provided that teacher with training on the lesson plans, the specially designed instruction. It could also be a paraeducator. It could be the principal. You could call me and say, hey, Leah, I need you to teach my class for 2 weeks. I, who has 17 licenses, okay, would not be able to provide those services because I don't have your license, okay? Unless you provided me training on how to provide those services. And once you did, I'm golden. If we document that.
You could provide it over Zoom too and have a parent sit next to the kid, which I've done.
Yes, you can. You can totally do that. Training and supervision of a para. But if that's not documented, then it's still non-compliant.
Yeah.
But if it's documented, golden.
I just mean do the therapy.
Yeah, you can totally do it.
Okay, this is another thing we've tried to discuss today and got stuck on, but it's kind of the opposite of that. So the teacher can be there, but the time that the teacher is scheduled to be there, the student doesn't show up. They're chronically missing. The school keeps them out for like an assembly or something. We are there to provide the service. The student is not. How can we just walk away from that? How do we document that?
Walk away. Okay, so if the student is chronically absent, you are not responsible, okay? If the absence is the responsibility of the parents, and courts have said that over and over and over again. Now, here is a caveat to that, and you heard it in the special ed law conference this year, the past year before that, okay? If a student is chronically absent, it becomes the responsibility of the IEP team to determine if the student needs services and supports related to the absence. Okay, if the student is chronically absent. So that it's kind of a two-part answer, right? Because the answer is no, you are not responsible to make up services when the kid's absent. What you are responsible to do is keep track of the absences. And if it's starting to look like a thing, then you got to get the IEP team together and say, what's going on here, kiddo? Is this related to the disability? Is this a new disability, a mental health issue, or a health issue? Okay, do we need to provide services and supports related to the absences? And the team, and the team can say no, but the team has to have had the conversation. Okay, so then there was something else related to that. Oh, that you asked about field trips or assemblies.
Yeah, if they take them away to assemblies.
If the LEA takes the kid away from the service, the LEA is still on the hook. The LEA is still on the hook. However, what is yes, I was just going to say, what is the standard? The standard is reasonable. Okay, so if the student missed, especially like think about a high school student, like in their senior year, not going to all the assemblies during the year, a hearing officer or a complaint investigator is going to look at that and go, you want to pull the kid out of the homecoming assembly for services? Hell no. Like, what is more important to the kid?
Makes it sound like that.
Yes, that
That's
should be on a button in the
That should be-
meeting.
Yeah, no, we're talking about kids here, not robots.
We have a question.
Class parties, yeah, reasonable. No, they're not gonna work for you if everybody else is having a party. Yeah,
Oh, do you guys have another
No,
question?
no,
Okay,
you.
yeah, I have a,
Document that.
Document.
data and-
and be sure that the IEP team just knows, like,
Let them know.
let them know, yeah, but no, taking kids out of parties, like, you're gonna become the enemy, and the service that you're being provided, that you are providing, is become less and less appetizing the older the kid gets. You'll become a pariah. Not cool.
I have a
Just
question
that
here
cover.
online. Sorry, we have a question from Sarah Law online. She says many SLPs in our district have asked about the 3-to-1 service delivery model highlighted by ASHA, where 3 weeks are dedicated to direct intervention and 1 week is set aside for indirect services like collaboration, assessment, and planning. Is this model possible within our compliance framework? And if so, how can districts explore it while meeting the IEP service requirements?
1, hey Sarah, how are you? 2, okay, so, yeah, you can do that, but no, you cannot do that. Back to question number 1, you can't put that you're providing weekly service and then 1 week not provide service, provide consultation. Consultation is not instruction.
I can add a clarification. on They're doing it as monthly minutes.
Then,
That's how they're
as
doing
long as you're getting the
And then
minutes,
When kids miss, they make them up that 4th week in their indirect week. So that's how our district does it. Sorry.
in case you couldn't hear, so if the meeting in Alpine, you're putting the minutes as monthly, and then if a kid doesn't show up, you've got that extra week, that's where you do the consultation.
Well, you do, like you call parents, you set up IEP meetings, but you also do direct therapy minutes on the kids that you have to make up minutes to meet their.
Oh, so you're doing
So
comp
it's-
services for other kids too.
Yes,
yeah.
that's how Alpine does it.
Okay,
Theirs
so.
might be different.
So if all that, having an IEP and updating files and blah, 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 that's work you have to do that is not represented in the IEP. You don't get credit for that in an IEP. That is not represented in an IEP. If you are sitting down, so if you are sitting down with me and consulting with me and teaching me how to be a better teacher to that student, that's a supplementary aid and service, a program support, right? But if you're at an IEP meeting or you're, doing a draft IEP, or if you're contacting parents, that is not recorded and you don't get credit for that in the IEP. You still have to do it.
But I think Sarah's asking, is it fine to do 3 weeks on and 1 week off? That's what ASHA.
So the
suggested.
answer is if the minutes are monthly, then yeah, and you're meeting the need, but it's not about the number of minutes. It's right back to what is reasonably calculated to provide a FAPE. If you have that discussion with the IEP team, you're like, this is what the kid needs. The kid needs 60 minutes of service a week. But we have this awesome service delivery model that is 120 minutes a week for 3 weeks, and then a week off to do blah, 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 and then 120 minutes a week for 3 weeks, and then a week off to do blah, 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 blah. And the parent goes, oh yeah, awesome. Write it down, you're good to go. But if I were the complaint investigator and you had not told me, or the parent, that that was your service delivery model, I would question if that was reasonable or not.
So you're
And
saying,
You would
where
explain it to me, and I would say, okay, I can see that's reasonable. And then I would tell you, you really need to tell parents about that, and you need to write it down
it needs to be in
In the note.
in the notes.
I think she said she wanted to follow up with another question.
What, Heather?
We don't get to take the notes. Our administrator takes the notes. So we don't.
Oh, so it's the administrator that I'm going to be firing.
Sorry.
So, comments from online, Ame said that Davis does services the same way, 3-to-1 for their SLPs. And Sarah Sarah again said to thank you because she was going to ask, how do we explain that in an IEP? And you did it great. So
Service delivery
that's it.
model.
Put it in the meeting notes.
Yep.
Meeting
And
notes.
some of the SLPs will justify it. Sorry, I used to be in speech. But they will justify it by saying, if I don't do that on my consult week, then we end up missing services with students.
Yeah, that will not fly with the due process hearing officer. I'll
Yeah.
just tell you, if SLPs describe it as, well, I have to leave this week open so I make up services, that will not fly.
No, but I mean, they would be missing time with their students because of evals and so they set that time apart so that their therapy time, they are there and the kids are for sure getting that services. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but how it has to be framed
Yeah.
is that the service delivery model is reasonably calculated to provide a FAPE. You will lose. I'll tell you right now, any complaint, any due process hearing, you will lose if anything comes up about the convenience of the provider. Special ed doesn't care about whether or not it's convenient for you. What special ed cares about is it reasonably calculated to provide a FAPE, and is the student accessing and making progress in the general education curriculum? That's it. Okay. But if it is an evidence-based service delivery model and you can explain it and you can document it, great. We need more evidence-based service delivery models. We need kids to make more than 1 year's growth in 1 year's time. And if that's the way to do it, let's all do it. But let's explain it and let's document it. Okay. All right.
These four left. I don't know.
Yeah, time wise.
We'll stay all.
I think they'll stay. I think they're enjoying this. Do you have time? Can you give us?
I do
15
have
more
time and
minutes?
I love teachers.
Give us 15 more minutes of your time. But
Okay.
don't spend 5 minutes on each one. Just kind of hit them all.
Okay.
Hit 'em. Yeah.
I have a question for Dr. Princess Voorhies.
Oh, I do miss y'all.
It's Kelly Aramaki. I have heard you and I understand that consultation is for adults. I have a couple things written in IEPs that read, the teacher of the deaf will provide consultative services with the student to ensure they understand their technology, are able to clean their technology, those kinds of things. What do I do?
So yeah, so I can see the thought process. I can totally see the thought process, but consultation is not specially designed instruction. So,
Specially designed.
right, it isn't specially designed and it isn't instruction, right? So, to that question, first of all, if you are actually doing instruction so that the student is learning about the technology, and the student is learning how to monitor their own technology, and you're teaching the student how to evaluate themselves, how to advocate, blah, 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 right? That is instruction, right?
Yes.
Quarterly, like one quarter.
Oh,
The one recommendation was put it in quarterly. Okay, and then we have a question in the back. Hang on.
Quarterly, like, so I know it's, if I were to do quarterly, do I then have goals that I need associated with this?
Okay, oh, good question. So are there goals? Okay, you cannot have service that does not relate to a goal. It doesn't have to have a separate goal. And this is a misunderstanding. You don't have to have, okay, we have 30 minutes of this service and this is this goal, and 12 minutes of this service and this is this goal. You make goals before you make services, right? An IEP is linear. So first you do a present level statement. Then you determine needs and goals. Then you determine services. So if the team and first you determine SDI, and then you determine if the student needs related services in order to access the SDI, because SDI accesses grade level standards, right? The general ed curriculum, specially designed instruction, adapt in order to get to the general ed curriculum. Related services gets you to SDI. So first you determine the goals. Then you determine the SDI, then you determine the related services. All those, I should be able to look at your IEP and I should be able to say, I should be able to look at the goals and look at the services and go, oh yeah, I can see that that aligns. That in order to do this, you would need this. Now for occupational therapy, because it's a related service, I should be able to look at the SDI and go, oh, in order for you to be able to do whatever writing thing student needs to do, you need to have a related service to be able to access the SDI. Okay, I should be able to, not knowing the kid and not knowing you, look at the IEP and see the alignment. Okay, now Kelly, back to your question. So if you're doing actual instruction, and part of instruction is repetition, right? Part of instruction is progress monitoring, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so if you are doing a good instruction that is pre-teaching, teaching, reteaching, application, progress monitor, go back and do it again, that's SDI. Okay, so then you should be writing that as a service, not as consultation.
Okay, so what do I do now? I mean, because do I ask for an amendment?
Well, you could, but no. I mean, when it comes up, you fix it.
Okay, okay, that was kind of my concern.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is an interpreting. Can I add to that? Because our district has gone back and we had one person that did signing services for our whole district, and then Terry and I did the spoken services, and that person put minute for minute for an interpreter on the direct services portion.
Okay, so interpretation is a direct service. Is it specially designed instruction? Those are not the same thing. Direct service and specially designed instruction are not the same thing. Direct service and related service are not the same thing. Direct means adult to kid, right? Specially designed instruction means adapting as appropriate, right? The content methodology, right? Okay, it means teaching something. Do interpreters teach? No. Interpreting is not SDI.
So does the interpreter not get put on the IEP at all? Or
No, the interpreter does get put on the, what is the interpreter doing?
They're providing an accommodation, right?
Yeah, in some cases, you could say that it was accommodation, but it's interpreting is a service to be able to get to the service, which is what? A related service.
So they go under related server?
So I don't want to make a blanket statement.
We put it on related service, but then every district I
Right.
go to puts it under, they'll have it on the DSI or they'll have it under, yeah.
Okay, but here's the weirdness is I'm not going to make a blanket statement because there are some reasons to do it either way. Okay, so let's go back to the question about what was the one about the cheat sheet?
Oh, yeah.
The cheat sheet. Okay, let me come back to that one on the cheat sheet.
We're
With the
expecting
cheat
that
sheet
now.
question.
That's
I'm going to assign someone on my team to do that. Teresa Judd has a new job. Okay, those are great questions, by the way, but I will make the blanket statement. Interpreting is not SDI. Okay, it's not instruction. Okay. All right.
Sorry.
The next one was, Q1. Okay, board member Bogus proposed some new rules to teachers. While many of them make sense, some are confusing. Do you have more updates, suggestions, clarifications? Okay, I do have an update. So the state board is putting together a working group to go through the educator ethics rule and propose language to them in the hopes that it will be ready by February when the rule is up for, when it reaches its 5-year sunset. Okay, so there will probably be surveys that go out. So watch for those if you want to respond, if you want to provide feedback. The language that board member Bogus proposed did not pass. So effectively, the state board is starting over, and they're starting over with groups of educators across the state who will will propose new language that hopefully in either they're hoping that in the January board meeting, in committee meeting, it will come to the law and licensing committee and then go to the full board in February because the rule sunsets in February, but it might not happen until February. Anyway, but watch for a survey because you will have the opportunity to provide feedback.
We have a question online. Question online. We have, it's from Jenny Alvey.
Oh,
She's
hey,
also, she's our mystery cheat sheet requester as well.
Oh, of course
Says,
you are.
I have a district charter school who only wants to put me under the support and accommodations area on the IEP, but I do provide direct services to the student. I have other districts who want me or who want to put my services under kid services. Even if the purpose is just consult with the parents. And sorry, she meant consult with the teachers. And then she also said, I am the one who requested the cheat sheet.
Okay, so Jenny, I have to tell you something that actually happened this week. Sidebar for the rest of you. So I have a dear friend who named their kid homeless.
Oh, good.
I hear that name.
Credit.
Man's back now. He's hiding in the office, and he's here.
Sounds like
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
So Jenny recommended a book to me many years ago. The main character's name was Hollis. So every time I hear my friend's kid's name, I think of you, Jenny. Okay, so the district or charter school who is putting your services in the supplementary aids and services is dumb because services that do not show up in SDI and related services do not get counted towards funding. So that's just dumb. That's just dumb.
Have that on record and then hit that in your IEP meeting.
Yeah, so that special ed director probably wants to call me because that may make a difference to the way their funding is coming in. And I'm happy to talk to whoever that is. The other one, putting it in related services, that's back to the question that sometimes it is difficult. Like for instance, behavior support services, speech, language therapy, those can be SDI. They can also be related services. So the Supreme Court has not said this is SDI and this is related service. What the Supreme Court has said is specially designed instruction is what the kid needs, okay? How you move the kid from where they are to grade appropriate curriculum, okay? What you as adults do to get them from where they are to grade appropriate curriculum, the grade appropriate standards, okay? Related services are the support that the kid needs to be able to access that instruction. So it's like it is illegal to have a related service on an IEP without specially designed instruction. That is not legal. An occupational therapist cannot have.
That's probably me, sorry. I just reopened my thing, sorry. Mute's not there. I don't have. Yeah, I know. Just need to leave.
The Balinese thing, I'm hearing the.
We had a professor of Balinese music come in and it's like.
Ooh, that sounds fun. Another sidebar, I actually took sign language from Nanette at the Y. Yeah, long time ago. Yeah, that just occurred to me. Okay, back to the OT. So a student cannot only need occupational therapy services. That is not legal.
Let's go down 504, right?
You can get occupational therapy services on a 504. Yeah, but you can't get them. That cannot be the only thing on an IEP because related services help the student access specially designed instruction. So the student and like this, the student is not eligible for special ed if the student does not need specially designed instruction, right? That's eligibility criteria. There are 3. Has a disability, The disability interferes with academic and functional performance. The disability requires specially designed instruction, right?
Don't be so condescending.
Kelly just really wants to be here. She should have been here in person.
She was yesterday.
Okay, then she gets the points. Okay, sorry.
Sorry, well, I mean, if you want to finish up, then maybe I can ask you later.
No, ask it.
Ask it, we're on it now.
We all wanna
We're
know.
getting in trouble too.
Audiology services, if you do a hearing test, there's not a goal associated with that, so should it be on an IEP?
Okay, for audiology services, there isn't a goal associated with it, so should it be on an IEP? That's a great question. What do y'all think?
Isn't it the same as nursing? I don't have
Yeah.
IEP goals.
It is. Yeah.
I don't think you need to be on an
I have a care plan, but it's not on. the-
It's, and a care plan is a supplementary aid and service. Audiology would be a supplement. You're not teaching anything, right?
But I'm still a related service
But-
if I'm managing a trach.
But so you could be, if what you're doing is providing personal care services and the student cannot actually access instruction without trach management.
Without somebody keeping them.
Yes, yes. Did that answer the
So
question?
audiology could then, if they're going around and checking their tech quarterly, they would be engaging with them.
So that would be specific to, is it actually needed in order for the student to access specially designed instruction? And the courts are kind of back and forth on that, to be honest.
Probably not. Yeah, right.
Oh, that's a good example, Heather.
Unless your student
Yeah.
would be, I mean, if their tech's not.
Yes, but then the courts have also said that cochlear implants are not required, like not something that is required by a school in order to provide FAPE. So that's why the courts have struggled with that particular question, is because of cochlear implants.
Same reason we can't, we still have to provide services even if like the ADHD student doesn't have their meds, you know.
Yeah, okay, so the question was, you still have to provide services when the student who has ADHD doesn't have their meds. That's also a very good example. See, you guys are just such good thinkers. See, I love this. This is a great way to end a Friday for me. Okay.
Well, we need to
sorry,
answer
sorry.
the question above. Go ahead.
So in general, it should be an accommodation.
A supplementary aid and service, a program support in general. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Just how can we best advocate for getting highly qualified?
Oh, yeah, best advocate for getting highly qualified interpreters. Yeah, this is not cool. Yeah. So policymakers, I mean, you can make the policy stricter. You can file complaints and do process hearings because policy happens as a result, unfortunately. Policy, follows complaints. Yeah, people break the rules and the rules get changed. You can advocate for more training. You can advocate for more mentoring. I have 4 projects in my office that we pay for with federal funds related to interpreters, and then 1 project related to Braille transliteration. So, I mean, we're putting money into it. One of the issues is humans that are actually interested in taking advantage of the opportunity. But to the point about not being paid well, that's a policy decision. A legislator could open a bill to ensure that all interpreters are paid, at a certain level or something. Yeah, that would be a policy decision.
So I'll just say that highly qualified interpreters don't often work as educational interpreters because the pay is so low.
Yeah.
And
But it's the same with SLPs, it's the same with OTs, it's the same with psychologists.
sure, I think I brought it up because the USDB sets the tone for how interpreters are paid across the state.
Oh, okay.
My district follows USDB's pay scale, so we can't ever increase our pay.
Unless USDB doesn't. Okay, so the question was, you can see the question on the screen, but the comment was that USDB seems to set the standard for what interpreters across the state make. So influencing USDB to be able to increase interpreter pay might benefit you and your interpreters. Noted. I will write that down. Thank
A
you.
lot of interpreters.
I did not know that. So thank
I
you.
can only ever hire novice level interpreters, because.
Because that's all you can pay?
Yeah.
Okay, that is super helpful to know. I appreciate that.
Do our interpreters get the full benefits package?
Apparently,
Oh.
Cindy has something to say.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, if they work full-time, then they do receive benefits, but educational interpreters at USDB are only contracted for the school year.
Yeah, 0.83.
They do get benefits through the summer, but yeah, so if you're full-time, you do get benefits. Was that the question? The answer is?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it answers it for me. So that's super helpful.
And you get benefits. Is that what you're saying?
Do most of our interpreters get the benefits? I mean, are we blocking them from full-time status? Do you know this by any chance? Because
No.
if we do set the tone, that would be a pretty melody.
That's something I can look into. And I'm going to tell you a secret.
Okay.
Record it just so you.
Oh, shoot.
I told you I tell the truth. But, so this is tangential secret, but my niece is one of your interpreters. So this is kind of important to me. So I am glad to have this information.
I don't think there's anything we can really do about interpreting in this conference because we have no effect on the.
No. But policymakers can, and I have influence with policymakers. So thank you for bringing it to my attention.
Living wage.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely reasonable. Absolutely reasonable.
Professionals our way, because we pay the professionals more than the novice. And we're short interpreters.
Sharing.
The professionals get paid more.
In our defense, we have to pay more for our interpreters because if we don't, they'll go work at McDonald's where they get, like we were paying 15,
Yeah, but
right?
your pay scale that our district has includes signing aides, and we don't hire signing aides, so it starts them at like $15 an hour, right? Like that's what our district looks at. Oh, we pay more than USDB because we're not starting at $15 an hour. But your pay scale that's at least public to us includes signing aides, which aren't interpreters.
Well, you're welcome. I guess. I don't know.
It's a big mess.
Great, thank you. All right, the next question is about what is the outlook for teachers of the deaf and hard of hearing educator preparation, I'm assuming. This is what this question is about. Okay.
They're so small, they're getting cut.
They are, yeah. So, and I can tell you that I have talked to both the Utah State and the University of Utah's educator preparation programs in the last couple weeks. And we don't want them to go away. And we are actively working to try to support educator preparation for deaf and hard of hearing teachers. And if they do, thank you so much. So nice to see you. If they do go away, the State Board of Education, so we do have the now Apple Deaf Ed program. But besides that, the State Board of Education would start looking at partnerships with other states, which is what we have several licenses that you can't get here, like the SPED endorsement is one. We have a partnership with the university in Texas.
Let me take that Coke.
Yeah, so. Okay, last question. What are the FERPA laws surrounding information sharing between teachers of the deaf, audiologists, and SLPs working with the same student? So what is the basis for sharing of information? Educational relevance. Educational relevance. So yeah, they need to share with each other. If it's the same student, there is educational relevance. In fact, a court would find if they weren't sharing, it was not reasonable.
What about
We use outside audiologists a lot. Our district may be the largest, but we have one audiologist who only does booth testing really and some hearing screenings. So we work with outside audiologists all the time. And so we literally have parents go, can you just call this audiologist or, and so we're going back and forth with outside audiologists often
This can release of information.
Yeah, so so the question is, working with, individuals outside of the educational profession, and that's important. That is not what I was thinking when I read this. So you just need release of information to work, because in that particular setting, FERPA does not apply, HIPAA applies. Yeah, if it's internal to the educational system, then yeah, you better be talking to each other.
That go through, because we have sometimes audiologists emailing us directly because they're like, the parent gave me permission to email you. But I mean, so is that HIPAA form on their end?
Yeah, they would have to
And
have
then
permission.
we need a
Here's the
piece of
thing.
Information on our, do we have it both?
We
So that
don't,
we're covered?
we're not covered by HIPAA, but the doctors we talk to have to have parents' permission to talk to us.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't talk to anybody without parents.
Right. I just want to make sure, like, do we need it on both sides? Like, we have.
So if you share information with an outside provider, then you need to have parent permission. If you receive information from an outside provider, they have to have the permission. Internally, y'all got it.
And so if we're all a part of USDB, this is very relevant right now. We're working on a new database to share between our audiologists and our teachers that would give them access to all the students and their information, their hearing loss, their devices and services. And then
very nice to
we would manage our visits inside of that database as well. Is it okay that the audiologists and the teachers of the deaf would have access to whatever?
The internal database?
Yeah.
Psychologist.
And the
Yeah.
psychologist. That's okay.
You'd better have access. Now,
Even if you're not working with that student, like this.
No.
Everybody is on that database.
It's 03, anybody that I've ever seen, any audiologist in our system.
They're not necessarily seeing all of the.
so that you can set up, it would be reasonable to set up permissions so that you only have access to the information related to students you are working with. But if the system does not allow that, then the ethics of the provider come into play. You need to have access to the information related to your students. And if you don't, it is unreasonable. So that is a system issue. So the administrator of the system would have to determine if mitigate the risk of, are you going to be in more trouble if people have access to files of students that they don't work with, but are held by educator ethics? So if they share, they lose their licenses. Or are you going to be in more trouble if the providers of the individual students do not have access to the records of those students? Can you kind of see which way I would rule if I was the complaint investigator? Yeah, you need access, and you need to be able to share with one another to do right by the student. And if you don't, if you have access right this very minute, any of you could probably go down the hall and pull out a file of a student who is not your file, or who you don't have an educational right to know, right? And you choose not to because you are ethical. And if you are not ethical, someone would file a complaint and you would lose your license, right? There is a consequence for that. The consequence for not having access to information that you have an educational right to know because you need to provide service to the student is that you are not providing FAPE. And the LEA is on the hook for that, not you. The LEA gets sued for that, not the human. The human gets sued in the first case, the LEA gets sued in the second.
So my comment is that there are other ways to share the information. Like if it's only an audiogram, my heavens, ask for the audiogram. Let's email it. Do you really need access to everybody in this database for that kind of stuff? If that's the only thing that's on that.
And that would be a very relevant administrative way to deal with the situation.
But if you're in the same provider and you're working with the same students, reasonable that they could share the database and just not do any nefarious activity with the data that's there. And if they do, then it's.
So the question is an administrative question.
Yeah.
The administration is responsible to ensure that the records are confidential and that only those who have an educational right to know access the records. That's the administration's responsibility. The administration has to do the best they can within the system that they have to meet those responsibilities. Okay? Then the human, the provider, has to access the records of students for whom they have some responsibility related to FAPE and have to not access records of students for whom they do not have an educational right to know. And that's the responsibility of the provider. Sometimes those two things are difficult to manage simultaneously. When that is the case, it is the LEA's responsibility to do right by as many students as possible and be able and have a reason to defend the decision that they are making, because the LEA is the one that gets sued, not the provider.
So please correct me if I'm wrong, but we were told that if we had any questions, we could talk to the administrator or whomever about now USDB is a subdivision state board. So we do have rights and responsibilities pertaining to student information. And that helped a couple people feel better that, oh, you're a subdivision. You're not just some rando with a badge. So is that
because
okay?
I think what she's asking is because we're now a subdivision of the State Board of Ed, it's okay that we have access to all of the student information that are deaf and hard of hearing. Is that
no?
correct?
That
You said that when people weren't comfortable like sharing student information with me.
That's her question. That's what she has used to tell other people. That's what she.
Just because USDB is now a subdivision of the board doesn't mean it doesn't give you an educational right to know to students to whom you don't have an educational right to know.
Kelly's talking about.
Exactly. It's just like when I have gone into a school and I'm like, I need copies of this. And they're like, okay, I'm on the document. And if this makes you feel better, we are a subdivision.
Yeah, that probably wouldn't make them feel better. But what should make them feel better is that you are providing services and supports on that IEP. It would be unreasonable for you to have access to records for a student for whom you are part of the reasonable calculation to provide a FAPE. That would be non-compliant. It would be illegal.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions for Leah Voorhies?
You guys are awesome.
Dr. Voorhies, we love that.
You guys are awesome.
You're really asking if there's more questions?
Yeah, you want to keep going? When do you get the deputy superintendent to be here?
I like it though, because it's bringing up things that's like, oh, I love it. So
this has actually been very good.
I would actually like.
I have a question online.
Yes, Ame, please.
Can we please have Dr. Voorhies to attend this conference every year?
Leah, Dr. Voorhies, would you please attend?
I would love to. That was the sweetest thing anyone said to me in a long time. Thank you.
this is really helpful though, because this is the current as can be. Like, this would be the perspective of the board as we're going through and making decisions in real time, because sometimes we're being told things and we're like, what is the why behind it? Or what is the rationale? Or is this a district decision? Or is this
a rumor?
decision?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And this gets all of us, I think this has been helpful today alone, just in the three conversations we've had prior of getting us on the same page, because we're coming from different districts. And then USDB has its own method of how does it absolutely have to be? And that's where you've been a great help to show us the right way to.
Well, thank you for having me and thank you for staying late. I'm happy to, to keep talking to people, but thank you for staying late.
I would love to have some guidance, not here, because it doesn't affect any of these guys, but I've had different people tell me different things about the medical history part of the eligibility.
Medical history, yeah. Medical history is difficult, but we're happy to talk about it. Yeah, it is difficult. And the regs are not super clear, to be honest.
And
So Utah trying to interpret the regs are federal, just FYI, regs are federal, rules are state. So the regs are not clear. And so Utah has tried to interpret them the best we can, but it's difficult because the feds weren't super clear. So I'm happy to talk more about that. Sweet. All right. Thank you, everyone.